Hello, happy Biden-Harris Inauguration Day. What a historic and exciting moment. Trump's gone. I've never felt so excited to see a helicopter flying, and that was flying away from the White House. And at some point during the flight, or perhaps when Trump arrives in Florida, somebody will take away the nuclear codes from Trump. And then I expect we will be able to sleep more easily than we have done in years, because we can still anticipate the threat of violence from Trump's supporters, but they don't have access to nuclear weapons. So it's a bit fabulous, isn't it? Hi, Richard. The clown has left the building. America and the world just exhaled, because we are all connected, and the world's fate was also wrapped up with America's fate. Our ability to attend to pressing existential problems for the human race, such as climate change. This was connected to Trump, who showed the opposite of global leadership, who walked back global leadership in every possible way, in relation to the pandemic, in relation to fossil fuel usage, in relation to renewable energy, in relation to standards for pollution, for air and water. So we're all probably enjoying, this blessed morning. My family celebrated the Biden-Harris inauguration with dinner, because where we are, there's very little COVID transmission, and we're allowed to go out provided we wear masks. And that's not expected to go away for a while, because immunization programs are starting. But yes, when you have low levels of community transmission, it's deemed to be relatively safe to go out. So that's what I wish for you all. There's a 100-day mask mandate challenge beginning from today. So I encourage you all to keep considering that, even though one mortal peril has just departed the White House in a helicopter, there still remains this perilous situation. More than 4,000 Americans still dying each day, and that's a number that continues to increase due to a mathematical concept known as exponential growth, married together with the harsh reality of an unattended to pandemic. So yes, Trump claimed a lot of things. He claimed very passionately that the world respects America again. And I thought the element of truth to that statement is that the world respects America for kicking out Trump, as the events of the Capitol insurrection, the violent insurrection, overrunning of the Capitol, illustrated that Trump was indeed a fascist who used his words to incite others to commit crimes, with the hint of authorization from him and the hint of a pardon. So MAGAs today are probably going to be pretty cross if they participated in those riots with the idea that Trump, before leaving office, would pardon them. I mean, he hasn't landed in Florida yet. He might still spring a surprise. Guess what? I pardoned everybody who participated in that. But as far as I understand it, he's unlikely to do so, because it would presumably prompt more Republicans to vote to convict him in the Senate. And a vote to convict and disqualify Trump from ever holding office in the future is something that would dampen Trump's ability to further grift off the heavily established madness that has beset a large subsection of the American public, who still look to him as if he's a godlike leader. A lot of that spell will be broken because of the loss of power following his exit from the White House. So Trump leaving office is likely to have a substantial effect on our collective ability to redeem people lost to the MAGA cult madness. People who we presumed were decent, but may have had chinks in their emotional, mental, and intellectual armor. Yes, Trump rescinded the rule that apparently he had implemented in 2017, saying that administration employees would not be able to gain employment as a lobbyist for 5 years after leaving the White House. So Trump rescinded that as he departed, meaning he's trying to help people who've worked with him to try and trade off their experience in working for Trump. I don't think that's going to help with their CVs in a lot of cases. Perhaps they can apply to be lobbyists and seek to get lobbyist jobs, but to be associated with Trump now is to tarnish whatever brand of whatever corporation you're brought along with. So even the MyPillow guy is not looking to hire right now. His business is severely constrained because Bed Bath & Beyond are no longer going to carry his overpriced, chopped up bits of foam in a pillowcase products. So that's exciting. And Pence went to church with Joe Biden for a service, which is nice, a pre-inauguration church service. One thing I'm just going to share is Biden getting a little bit emotional, talking about the people who've helped him succeed. And America is so lucky that Biden felt drawn to it. Biden had the level of public profile needed to run against a celebrity president. He was the celebrity apprentice president who was associated very powerfully in the minds of many Americans with business success. And they wanted that business success for themselves and for their country. And it was all a fabrication. Donald Trump's purported business success is actually a product of money laundering, and his most secure income was actually derived from appearing in the role of a businessman on that show, as artfully woven by Mark Burnett, the producer and creator of Survivor as well, and the hardcore Christian fundamentalist, white nationalist, one of many whom have been covertly acting behind the scenes of American political life to bring about a political movement that would seek to preserve white dominance in the United States. So thanks but no thanks, Mark Burnett. Thanks but no thanks, Steve Bannon. Thanks but no thanks, Mike Pence, Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, all of the people, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, all of the people complicit in perverting American public life, in hyping up, in emotionally manipulating and cult brainwashing too many Americans to hop on board with this idea that they are special, that they have some special entitlement to the riches of America, and that diversity and multiculturalism was a threat to their God-given birthright. So when I say thanks, obviously it's sarcasm. Thanks but no thanks means just no thanks. America has rejected you decisively from office, Donald Trump, and your followers have deluded themselves by adopting Donald Trump's fabricated reality that things were stolen from him. Always with conservatives is this confected outrage of we are betrayed, people are stealing from us. It's a potent political tool to avoid facts, circumvent facts, and just create an emotional appeal that is bereft of attachment to reality. White people are not mistreated in the United States. They are not missing out by virtue of not being included in the protected classes that protect people from discrimination. They just feel left out, and they just feel like they're the only true, authentic heirs to American prosperity. They just feel like they shouldn't have to pay taxes. It's all about their feelings rather than any kind of objective reality, which is why it's not an ironic coincidence, but it's exactly why Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and all of that crowd perpetually say facts over your feelings, because they are highly intent on pushing the opposite. What they're doing is pushing feelings over facts. Here's Joe Biden.
And for my family throughout the years. Tommy, you've been a friend a long time. I look out there and I see Mike Przicki. Mike, I'm glad you're healthy, man. You're here, pal. I'm really glad, Mike. Look, it's kind of emotional for me. Look, you're with me my whole career. and through the good times and the bad. I want to thank you for everything. To my fellow Delawareans, on behalf of the entire Biden family that's here today, I want to express how much you mean to me and to every one of us.
So I hope you liked that. That was just a short extract I wanted to share with you. Notice on the podium it says Major Joseph R. Bo Biden III. So I'm presuming that podium is decorated with his son's name in order to honor his son who died in his 40s of brain cancer. So Richard points out, yes, big up Jamaica, America, land of immigrants. And everyone in Jamaica is so excited. A woman of Jamaican descent is the first female vice president and vice president of color in the USA. And how lucky are we to have a woman of her diverse and eclectic background as well, so that so many can join in with that celebration and that feeling of representation. So there's communities in India celebrating, there's communities in Jamaica celebrating, there's women of color all over the United States, as well as women. This is the first time a woman has been a vice president, and to have a vice president and a woman of color in this position, this level of access to power, because she is respected by Joe Biden. She's not there, as Mike Pence was, as a prop to show unconditional positive regard to the president. She is there to advise and counsel and contribute. And we saw in the debates that she was not unqualifiedly positive about Joe Biden. She reproached him for endorsing or for ever having entertained the idea that busing might be an imposition on white America, because she pointed out that the children who benefited from the end of school segregation and the system of restoring more of an equal distribution of school resources by virtue of delivering children to schools outside of their immediate geographic area, that whole busing thing, that she was one of those children on that bus. And it was something that helped lift the standards for schools, even though since then, different legislative developments have actually led to a high degree of unofficial segregation once again in American schools. But with a Democratic-controlled executive branch and legislative branch, there is high hopes for many, many social ills in the United States to be addressed positively with proactive legislation. Go Harris, 2024, 2028. Very exciting. Yes, I'm all up for a degree of unconditional positive regard with limitations. So I don't ever want to subscribe to criticizing people purely for criticism's sake. And I remember that people were so gleeful that Obama attained public office, the offices of the presidency in 2008, that Democratic voters neglected to vote in the requisite numbers in midterm elections, allowing Republicans to gain power. Now, I think America has suffered greatly from Republican rule over the last 4 years. Republican control of the Senate has sabotaged the output of a Democratic-controlled House. Republican control of the Senate has conspired to keep a corrupt president, an impeached president, in office, even after there was much evidence and much forthright and honest testimony about his corrupt efforts to draw in the president of Ukraine into a conspiracy, into a plot to fabricate disparaging details against his likely political opponent, Joe Biden. Yes, Pence was yards away from being handcuffed and potentially executed or executed by hanging by a whipped up, unruly mob. But Mitch actually gave a more stern denouncement of the president and his incitement of the Capitol Hill insurrectionist mob. But Mitch did so in a transactional sense, as in, I grant you that Trump incited the riot, and now we need to compromise. So it's always transactional with Mitch, but his admission that the president incited the riot clearly serves Mitch in some way. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made that concession. Trump and Trumpism are not gone, but they are greatly diminished because fascists require access to the public. They require a fire hose they can use to continue to brainwash their base. Now, many of them will keep churning that wheel of, they will keep brainwashing themselves. They're self-starters to a degree, but without Trump making public appearances, without Trump having Twitter to constantly deliver his stream of consciousness thoughts to his adoring fan base, that's a lot of the engine of the brainwashing. I mean, Fox News still exists, and it's being dragged even more to the right by its interest in making money and the fact that Newsmax and OAN are stealing some of its audience share. So what do the Newsmax crew do with Trump out of office? I imagine they've been pushing the lie that the election was stolen. What do they keep talking about with Trump out of office? Well, we've got all the trolls here today. Now, the thing is, Dwight Too Good, is that when you come here to try and push your benighted points of view on us, you're really just masturbating in public. That's what this is. You want to convince yourself, which is why you're here, telling us these things as if to resolve any quiet subconscious doubts you might have in yourself. I mean, why would you bother otherwise? There's no election to win. We're just celebrating a return to sanity over here. But if you don't have people who love you enough to help you out of your delusional points of view now, maybe you never will. And maybe it will keep affecting your life and sucking out your energy. I mean, we're sympathetic in that we've had 4 years of our lives and mental energy consumed by a very destructive president who's effectively murdered 400,000 people through criminal neglect. But you're here. You're here. Yes, Kamala Harris was embraced by Black voters once she was adopted on the presidential ticket, and many campaigned for her to be Biden's running mate. But they pragmatically understood America, that a woman, and a woman of color, was not an ideal way to bring aboard the number of voters needed to topple a white supremacist aspiring dictator. You needed someone who could help build a coalition of disaffected white voters across the swing state to be able to work with rather than against the electoral college system. So Joe Biden, as the presidential candidate, and Kamala Harris at his side, was able to win by not only 8 million votes, but also by a substantial number of electoral college votes. Yes, Kamala Harris was on a bus to a school. So you're misinformed about that if you don't believe that Kamala Harris benefited from the busing system. No, it's not at all a shame that Julian Assange didn't get a pardon. He worked with Donald Trump Jr. to try and buy the WikiLeaks team some credibility. He asked Donald Trump Jr. to just get WikiLeaks just one tax return from Trump in order to negate criticisms that WikiLeaks was targeting Hillary Clinton. So Julian Assange was very much on the side of the Russians in seeking to undermine American democracy by installing a candidate who would be beholden to Russia and to WikiLeaks. So evidently Trump didn't feel so beholden to WikiLeaks that any kind of sense of loyalty would kick in and he would pardon that rapist and traitor. He's not really a traitor because Julian Assange isn't American, he's Australian, but he's traitorous to the interests of the West. And that's because he's an egotistical maniac who sees himself as someone who's a corrective to the power of the imperial might of the West. And look, fair to call out the West for being imperial occasionally, but not fair to seek to and succeed to destroy democracy for 4 years and cause increases in the global temperature because of failure to take action on climate change to set everybody's prospect of surviving in decades into the future back a whole chunk, because Julian Assange is such a demigod to himself that he thought he could work with Russians and it wouldn't backfire on him eventually. Obama did not at all lie about his progressivism, and people who argue that are probably the people who fail to turn out to vote in midterm elections. They're people who fail to perceive that in order for a president to have power, you need a cooperative Congress. And Obama had Mitch McConnell, who Obama may have been naive in thinking that there would be any level of Republican collaboration with him as a president. But what he didn't anticipate was that racism would compound their inherently anti-democratic, obstructive tendencies. So Mitch McConnell was very proud of stopping Obama from appointing even a Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland. He wouldn't even allow hearings for that Supreme Court judge nominee. And the American voting public certainly underestimated the quiet depravity of Mitch McConnell. So when you criticize Obama, you're just displaying your ignorance of what Obama was contending against. And that ignorance is important to dissolve, because you need more situational awareness going forwards about what is needed to do to continue to contain Mitch McConnell's lust for power, because he will seek any chance he can to reestablish a Republican majority, in which case he will use his power to then harm Americans, block progressive legislation, block pro-social legislation that helps Americans, and once again benefit his donor classes and his elite white nationalist, Christian fundamentalist friends. And that would be the fault of people like you seeking to put blame on Obama rather than on the shoulders of recalcitrant voters who failed to come out in the same strength and of numbers that Republicans turn out consistently at midterms and as well as presidential elections. So that's on you and your ilk, sir. I hope you see the light at some point in the future, be it this year or the next. Your voting is required. You know, he wasn't ever particularly with Biden. He's a troll who's been visiting me for a long time, but he's a troll who's possibly voted for Biden, but he's certainly on board with undermining him before the election and after the election as well. There you go. At least he or she concedes that Biden is infinitely superior to Trump. Probably doesn't concede the infinitely, actually, but Biden is infinitely superior to Trump because Trump is a unprincipled criminal fascist mass murderer, and Biden is someone who's devoted his life to public service and has achieved a lot for the American people, who regrets the erroneous parts of the Crime Act, which sought to address the very high levels of crime that were operational in the United States at the point at which that legislation was argued for and passed. And the Black Caucus supported the Crime Act that Biden was instrumental in compiling and passing. But ultimately, that legislation was bad because it did interact with a lot of structural, systematic racism, which led to very pronounced negative outcome for people of color in the United States. I don't know what Trent is referencing, but I don't particularly care. Ooh, is it Sam? Is it Chris? Is it Craig? I've forgotten your name. Is it John or Sean? But as NCA says, as much as I hate Mitch, I think he's going to vote to convict Donnie 2 times. Ooh, I like your positivity about that. I'm just going to remain neutral because whilst I hope that Mitch would, and the fact that Mitch was prepared to say in public in a speech on the floor of Congress that Donnie incited the riot. I can't quite see it happening, but I'll be happy if he does. I'll be happy if there's 16 or 17 Republican senators who vote to convict Trump and then follow through with a vote to disqualify him from holding office in the future. And once Trump is convicted by a 2/3 majority of however many senators turn up to that vote. So again, some Republicans could avoid voting to convict Trump, but could help out with the proportions by just staying away. If they stay away, then it'll take a lower number of senators to vote to convict Trump, and the Democrats will be turning up for that vote. So once 2/3 have convicted Trump of the crimes for which he was impeached, it then only takes a simple majority to rule to disqualify him, and Democrats will have a simple majority. I don't know if Joe Manchin would vote to disqualify Trump from further office, but one hopes that he would. Yes, I imagine that Mitch would be mad as all hell over the Georgia runoffs, which Trump was probably ambivalent about, in that I imagine his dominating emotion would be that he wanted the Republicans in Georgia to lose, because if they won, that would have undermined his narrative that a Republican victory wasn't possible in Georgia because Democrats were controlling and perverting the electoral outcomes in Georgia through use of machines, Dominion machines, systematic machines, software, all of which has already been debunked, and Dominion software is Dominion voting machines are suing Sidney Powell. They've suggested they're going to sue Lynn Wood. Oh, they're going to sue Mike Lindell, the owner of the MyPillow pillows, etc. Yes, Parler, that lost the Amazon servers. They're already back with access to Russian servers now. And Parler is a very potent location for organizing violence, so that is a problem. I wonder what Biden and a Democratic majority Senate can do. So tomorrow, Kamala Harris is swearing in the 3 Democratic senators, one to replace her, and the 2 victorious Democratic senators from Georgia, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. Those 2 beautiful, beautiful men, a Jew and a black man. I don't like saying that. I feel a bit awkward saying it, but it's true. A Jewish man, I feel more comfortable with that. A Jewish man and a black man, one office in Georgia. And it highlights that no state is necessarily a red state. They are all more likely to be voter-suppressed states, voter-discouraged states. And with proper organizational groundwork and adequate infrastructure investment in voter turnout infrastructure, then all states can be blue, which I'm cheering, not because I think there should only be one functional political party in the United States, but Republicans have proven they don't deserve the trust of the people of the United States, that they're actively willing to act in ways that are antithetical to the interests of the people of the United States. Yes, trolling, that's a great analogy, Zinte. Trolling is a little bit like coming here and pulling your junk out of your shorts and saying, look at my opinions. They're a bit incongruous to your broadcast, but I can wave it around and I will. And you blocked me. That's an infringement of my rights to show you anything in my pants that I want to show you. And we're like, actually, you're mistaken. You don't have the right to show us whatever content of your pants that you wish to show us. There are limitations to your freedom to do whatever you want and whatever you feel like that. I'm always telling my children that. Their justification is frequently, but I wanted to do this. And I need some better comebacks for that, because at the moment I'm just sort of saying, yep, there's other principles at work, children. It's not just about what you want. What is up with these sinister Aussies? Oh, yes, we're talking about Rupert Murdoch, who's an American citizen now and who renounced his Australian citizenship but was originally Australian. Look, I'm going to say racism. Julian Assange is, well, he has the larrikin spirit of a hacker, but he's a rapist. So, okay, Australian racism and misogyny. look, we are a British colonial outpost for the last 200 years. And before that, we had Indigenous Australians who were attacked and who battled unsuccessfully and cooperated with and were massacred by white people from England who felt that they were entitled to take the land of Australia at that time, and that attitude of entitlement and a derogatory, a lack of regard for the well-being and the personhood of Indigenous Australians, that persists, and that inflames Rupert Murdoch, who's a reborn Catholic and has no doubt a love for that whole concept of white Jesus, and then the inheritance of white Jesus, which is for his white children to inherit the earth and maintain their dominion over that earth by buying political power and influencing, unduly exerting influence over various levels of government. So Rupert Murdoch enjoys having in his pocket the government of Australia, and until this morning, the government of the United States, and also the government of the United Kingdom, all in Rupert Murdoch's pocket, and he's affiliated with his billionaire fossil fuel magnate friends as well. Nothing to diagnose Joe Biden with. As we were just watching, he's very mentally competent, and some people don't like to believe that because they've drowned themselves in Trumpian propaganda.
You know, in our family, the values we share, the character we strive for, the way we view the world, it all comes from home. It all comes from Delaware. The state that gave my mother and father a home and a livelihood when they needed it most. The state that made my brother and sister and I, both of whom are here, understand that we could do whatever we dreamed of, whatever that was. And
that sounds like the greatest gift that a family can give a child, and I'm resolved to do it for my own children, to help them believe they can do anything that they want. But also Joe Biden's family apparently told him that he was as good as anyone else and also no better than anyone else. So to believe that everyone has that spark in them, that they can, given the right support and the right circumstances, achieve anything they put their mind to, especially when working in concert with supportive groups of people. So Biden evidently sees his calling as to inspire Americans to a higher purpose of working together, supporting each other, and for government to genuinely serve the public, to provide security, safety, freedom from being poisoned by toxic chemicals, freedom from having America's geopolitical standing destabilized by a self-serving criminal, all manner of different types of freedom, and freedoms that are far more legitimate than the gunophiles' attachment to owning weaponry of mass murder. John points out that you shouldn't assume Mitch will do anything unless it's politically beneficial. True, but it can be hard to predict sometimes what Mitch McConnell thinks will be politically beneficial to him. Usually, it's fairly safe to predict that obstructing Democrats is something that Mitch McConnell will see politically beneficial, and it usually is, because you obstruct Democrats, the media is not that adept at holding Mitch McConnell to account. It won't say his name. It won't describe his actions because that requires careful analysis. And a lot of the media has hitherto been addicted to presenting what Republicans say versus what Democrats say. And when you have someone who's prepared to lie and deceive and manipulate, as Mitch McConnell has been, then the ball is fundamentally in his court if he's prepared to be deceptive, and if the media is inadequately prepared to call him out on that deceit. You're saying, look what happened after the 6th. Dude couldn't even speak live or online. Which dude are you talking about? Are you talking about Mitch? Zinte says, what do you think Putin's next move is? Putin, don't know. I think he's going to keep paying people to be rude about Joe Biden, to seek to weaken the United States by capitalizing on the gullibility of those on the far left who will keep saying very negative things about how Biden is another Trump, or that there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats, and that everybody's terrible because they haven't delivered Medicare for all on a plate. Fitch isn't going to happen, far leftists. Biden can improve the medical system, which is grossly inadequate and leaves a lot of people out in the cold with regards to access to appropriate levels of medical care and preventative medical care, which is really important for maintaining a healthy, functional society. But yes, there's not going to be any fairy that can snap their fingers and deliver Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders ran as a presidential candidate twice on a platform of Medicare for all, and he lost decisively in both primary elections in 2016 and 2017. A Jewish man and a black man walked into a bar in Georgia. Barman says, "What'll it be, senators?" That is one of the sweetest jokes ever. Bob thinks Putin will retire. I don't know. I think despots often have a fear that if they retire, they will lose access to the trappings of power. And they believe they need those trappings of power that are associated with the top position because they fear being assassinated, because they know on some level that they have actively worked to harm the people whom they are sworn to lead. All right, I'm going to go through my bookmarks quickly, and then you guys could probably go and watch the inauguration. That would be fun, wouldn't it? And I would just go to bed. Oh, no, wait. Yes, Russia is an oligarchy. Putin is the wealthiest. He's not just going to retire because he's made enough money. He's going to stay in power until his death, if possible, because he doesn't want to be brutally murdered. This is Jim Acosta making a joke about how he's scheduled to be on Air Force One, but he's a little bit concerned. I'll let him tell his own joke. All right.
I am scheduled to at this point, Anderson. We'll see if they let me on the plane. I'm a little concerned that mid-flight they may hand me a parachute and say, good luck. But at this point, Anderson, yes, that's the plan.
Wow. Jim, I appreciate it. We'll check in with you throughout the day.
So that's a cute little joke from Jim Acosta that he's concerned they'll hand him a parachute. Ooh, what could progressives push that Biden might be more willing to pass? What might make further progressive gains easier? Two important possibilities: voting rights and labor rights. So yes, one of the 17, is it one of the 17 executive orders that Biden's plan to, okay, I've got the 17. Do you want to hear them? 1, these are the proposed executive orders for Joe Biden to sign today. Stop border wall construction, end the Muslim travel ban. 3, rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, which will take 30 days to go into effect. 4, end the Keystone XL pipeline and revoke oil and gas development at national monuments. At the Bear Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante National Monuments in Utah, and at the Northeastern Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monuments in New England. So that's fantastic. Oh, the volume was too low? Sorry, Alan. Would you like to hear it again with the volume up higher? 5, count non-citizens in the US Census again, which is really important. The Constitution mandates that everybody on American soil be counted in the census, so there can be adequate provision for sanitation, for government services, for libraries, for hospitals, for roads. You need to know how many people are in the United States, not how many citizens there are, or official residents. You just need to know people, because even undocumented migrants still generate garbage for garbage collection, still poop into sanitation systems that would be overtaxed. Of course, Trump didn't want undocumented people counted in the census because that's part of the Republican push to disenfranchise areas with higher levels of migrants, to punish people for entertaining and embracing multiculturalism. All right, Alan wants to hear the Jim Acosta joke. I will cheerfully play it again.
Ceremony. And Jim, you're actually going to be flying to Florida on Air Force One with the president?
I am scheduled to at this point, Anderson. We'll see if they let me on the plane. I'm a little concerned that mid-flight they may hand me a parachute and say, good luck. But at this point, Anderson, yes, that's the plan.
Wow. Jim, I appreciate it. We'll check in with you throughout the day. I want to bring the music they're playing. It's classic.
Okay. Oh, and there's the helicopter. Oh, that's Donald and Melania walking towards the helicopter. And of course, they've departed now. I don't have an update for you on that, John. I don't know if Acosta was allowed on or not. Does anybody else want me to keep reading the 17 proposed executive orders for Biden to sign today? There's a few more to go. We join the World Health Organization is number 6. Dr. Anthony Fauci will join a board meeting to deliver remarks on global health and the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 7, executive order number 7 is the 100 days masking challenge and nationwide face mask and social distance mandate on federal buildings, lands, and by federal employees and contractors. And that's a potent change to the American public to be very visible in that broad adoption on federal lands, federal properties, federal employees, federal contractors, all wearing masks to signify to the people someone who actually cares about these outcomes is in charge now. Do the thing that is helpful to reduce the risk of transmitting COVID to each other and killing each other. Stop killing each other. The time to really step up our efforts to reduce those deaths is now. Number 8, executive order number 8, extend eviction and foreclosure moratoriums. So to save all of those people who were about to be evicted, I believe in California alone it was 465,000 people due to be evicted within the next few weeks. 9, continue a pause on student loan payments until September the 30th. Number 10, defend the Dreamers program for undocumented young Americans. So I believe that's before the Supreme Court still, I'm not entirely sure. 11, change Trump's arrest priorities for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. 12, keep protections for a group of Liberians in the country. 13, restructure federal government coordination with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. That's very important to save potentially hundreds and thousands of lives by decisively stepping up the federal government response, which may in turn motivate those Americans who haven't felt compelled to do so far, to take the pandemic seriously and to modify their own behavior accordingly. People take cues from each other, and people take cues from the federal government. And the federal government under Trump gave many people, Trump supporters, but just also people without strong political convictions one way or the other, they were still getting the message loud and clear from the federal government. Masks aren't important. They're not worth inconveniencing yourself for. The president doesn't believe that they work. And the power of the presidency is considerable, and that's gone from Trump. And it's embodied in Biden. And Biden says the science supports mask wearing. So stop being dumb and start being smart and care for others, not just yourself. You're not just calculating the risk of whether or not you yourself might suffer from chronic health problems as a consequence of contracting COVID. You're not just concerned about your own likelihood of surviving a case of moderate or severe or mild COVID. you have to include in your calculations the risk of being a link in a chain of viral transmission that will spread this disease to enough people that some people will die who needn't have died, that some people will lose parents and grandparents unnecessarily, that the pattern of losing hundreds of thousands of Americans unnecessarily will end. Bob and Holly are on the list for vaccines, but there's not enough. Yes, there's a new sheriff in town, Bob. I have hopes that Biden will compel corporations to step up the production of the vaccine using his power as the president to use the Defense Production Act to use military level powers of forcing forcing American corporations to begin manufacture of items that are critical to America's success in contending with a national level emergency. New Jersey only got 100,000 a week, and you need 17 million altogether. And Alan wants to remark that he's happy to count me as his friend, just saying thanks for all you do. Why, thank you, Alan. That's a lovely advertisement break. I feel like my voice does need a rest, so let's find something else that we can watch. Oh, this is an important thing I'll share with you. It's an ad from Biden's presidential campaign, but it's very relevant to this moment, particularly when Trump was arguing this morning yesterday that he made America be respected again, and don't lose that important legacy from Trump. Okay.
World leaders caught on camera laughing about President Trump. Several world leaders mocking President Trump.
They're laughing at him. My administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
World leaders mocking and ridiculing him for being completely off balance.
Allies are deeply worried about it. They say he's becoming increasingly isolated. Something is very wrong.
The world sees Trump for what he is: insincere, ill-informed, corrupt, dangerously incompetent, and incapable, in my view, of world leadership. And if we give Donald Trump 4 more years, we'll have a great deal of difficulty, if ever, being able to recover America's standing in the world and our capacity to bring nations together.
Bless you, Joe Biden. You're probably the only person that could have done that, led a successful campaign to marshal enough Americans together under the umbrella of building back better, restoring the American soul, restoring the American economy, restoring the health of the American people. And so I'm so happy he's inaugurated today. If it all passes safely, I will cry tears of joy, just as Biden cried when standing at a podium adorned with the name of his eldest son who died in 2015. Let's find out. Yep, he died on the 30th of May, 2015. Beau Biden, the former Attorney General of Delaware. And bless Joe Biden's commitment to serving the public. All right. Why, yes. Thank you. What made you interject or interpolate that remark? I also coast on the intelligence of others. So through access to Twitter, I've been exposed to some very intelligent, very well-informed, very accomplished people, and people who may not be accomplished, but who also have valuable insights. And I'm grateful to Twitter for that, although I also understand Twitter's role in facilitating the spread of thought poison emanating from an orange despot. Oh, maybe I'm going to call him the orange despot for a little bit, because I feel like we all deserve a holiday from having to say Trump. But I still want to talk about his role in inflicting such high levels of uncontrolled pandemic, uncontrolled viral spread on the American population. And I think that's important to wrestle with that, because the public needs to know in order to better be able to reverse course for those people who haven't yet modified their behavior in response to the pandemic. And it's not just Trump supporters, it's politically oblivious people who got a powerful message from the president that the pandemic didn't matter and that their own personal chances of survival were high. So why bother participating in group efforts to reduce transmission of the virus? Why bother to wear a mask? Why bother to restrict your opportunities for fun? Why not have super spreader parties and hope that you just all got it mild and be completely heedless about what might happen to other people in the community who would suffer as a consequence of your participation in a ill-considered misanthropic herd immunity strategy. Misanthropic's a word that people won't hear often. I haven't heard it for years, but it means anti-humanity, if I understand correctly, and I will check. Misanthropic. Having or showing a dislike of other people, unsociable. Okay, so that's sort of generally what I mean. If you don't have a love for other people, it's understandable that you might not want to modify your behavior to save the lives of others. But there's multiple elements at play here. People underestimate the risk to themselves of suffering from chronic disease, even if their lives are likely to be spared from a COVID-related death. I love that you're convinced that Trump will be convicted by Mitch. You know what? People sometimes caution each other not to cross that bridge until they come to it, in terms of not suffering from anxiety about a possibility that may or may not eventuate. But why not entertain some joy that may or may not eventuate? So I'm going to entertain some joy that Mitch McConnell and other Republican senators may vote to convict Trump. I'm just going to indulge the promise of that, or the hope of that, for a little bit. Oh, look, we've got a troll pretending to be a doctor and a person of color. That kind of looks like blackface, so we should probably report that account. It says, so I guarantee you will continue to bash Trump forever. Why? Blah, blah, rude things about Biden. Donald Trump's role in damaging and hurting America and Americans will be discussed for a long time, because that understanding is critical to limit the future damage of Trump co-conspirators and would-be fellow despots. So your promises have no value, but at the same time, it's true that they are not guaranteed either. We don't know how the Republican Party will act. We don't know how angry they will be with Trump for having sold out Republican power in the Senate by purposefully contributing to Republican voter confusion in Georgia. They weren't sure whether it would be a betrayal of Trump to turn out to vote for the Republican candidates. They thought it might be a betrayal of Trump because there was strong intimations that Trump was telling them not to trust those voting machines. So if they agreed with what Trump said, why would they turn out and use those machines? I mean, Trump also told them to go vote for the Republican candidates. So there was conflicting messaging, which conflicted enough Republican voters, meaning that they couldn't numerically match the strength and the fervor and the voting commitment of Democrats who were energized by Stacey Abrams to turn out and test their luck on voting in Democratic senators. So Stacey Abrams empowered and energized the Black voting community in Georgia and those white people with enough sense to recognize the destructive intent and history of Republican politicians and their actions. Don't block the trolls. You want to get them yourself. I'm not doing it. If you want Alan to let you have a chance to play whack-a-mole, whack-a-troll, then in an intellectual sense, then appeal to Alan. Say, Helen, hold back, let me have a turn. definitely Trump and his family's power has taken some significant body blows, and the fallout remains to be tested, but there are signs of people changing their mind. Ooh, which means I've got something nice I can share with you. It's a video of one MAGA follower, and I believe this is not sarcastic. I believe it's genuine. A video of a woman who is having some concerns about the truthfulness of Q and Q predictions. Okay.
So, who else is feeling just a little silly? Just a little, like went too far down the rabbit hole. Now I'm back out again. And if nothing happens on the 20th, how many of you are going to feel stupid as hell? I can't do it anymore. And who the fuck is Q? Who is it? Who is this person? Because none of it has come true. And I was just thinking, like, what if this person knows that none of this stuff is true and they're just messing with people, like getting inside their heads? I thought something would happen today in Trump's speech. Nothing. So
okay, that's
who
her.
else is feeling just a little silly?
I like that she says she's feeling a little silly, which is good for her if she's able to recognize the possibility that was all a con. Then her brain isn't too heavily cemented to the position of, I will never admit to being wrong. I will go to my death, moving the goalpost to say that Trump is really still the president and he's the shadow president, and they let Joe Biden pretend to be the president just to not disrupt America too much. But Trump is really behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. I'm sure there's some QAnon people pursuing that level of craziness. They are much more crazy than normal people can easily understand, because people mostly project their own estimation of their worth on others. So if you think you're okay, you're more likely to think other people are okay too. Donald Trump is paranoid, particularly because he understands his own depravity, that he's a rapist who has no loyalty and undercuts people at every opportunity. He understands that. And he also understands that he had the keys to inspiring fervent devotion from his followers through flattery and through encouraging them to identify with him, that they too could be wealthy people, that they too were special just like him, that they too might be criticized by the elites or the politically correct or by Democrats, but that were false criticisms, and they weren't really racist. They were just smart about who to distrust and who really is an enemy, and how to go about banning those people and undermining others. Even as Trump left office, his administration was still taking actions to strip legal protections from LGBTQ people. So still pandering to Christian fundamentalist nationalists on his way out of the building, highlighting that he has hope to continue the grift from Christian dominionists who felt that he was their champion, that they needed everybody to adopt Christian values and Christian practices in order for their lives to have meaning and to be good. So Bibles have to be restored in schools, and textbooks have to be written by people who don't address the ongoing legacy of slavery and of discrimination and unprincipled rationalizations of Black people being less worthy than white people because Jesus was white, and just in an effort to minimize the evils of slavery, to pretend that there's something inherently lesser about one people of some particular skin color over others. So anybody that's bought into that immoral, false rationalization system just to feel better about their ancestors and to feel better about American history, Trump held out a key to avoid feeling bad about any of that stuff. You just simply have to lie about whether or not it's true. Again, another of the final closing acts of the Trump administration was to start something called the 1776 Project, which, I can share with you something about that. Here we go. So on his way out the door, Trump couldn't resist one last bit of jaw-dropping racism. The Trump administration's last-ditch report is shoddy scholarship that decries its clumsy partisan intent. Oh, look, white people and people of color joining hands during a civil rights rally in front of the Washington Monument in 1963. That is a coalition. That doesn't matter what your skin color is there. That matters about the contents of your character. Will you stand as an ally with people who were fighting to have the same basic rights afforded to them as white citizens of the United States? So on Monday, the Trump administration released the first and only report from the president's Advisory 1776 Commission, a commission that Joe Biden will disband today by executive order. Its authors insist that the 45-page document is an effort to set the historical record straight. They wrote, in order to build up a healthy, united citizenry, scholars, students, and all Americans must reject false and fashionable ideologies that obscure facts, ignore historical context, and tell America's story solely as one of oppression and victimhood, rather than one of imperfection, but also unprecedented achievement towards freedom, happiness, and fairness for all. So you can see how that would appeal to some people. They're like, got to be happy, got to cheerlead for America, can't have an undue focus on suffering and victimhood. They understand that there is a backlash in American culture today against the touchy-feeliness of young people today and of the left that want to have victimhood acknowledged as a type of currency that does buy you credibility in some circles to say, yes, I have been oppressed in this way. My identity is that of being a victim, and my oppressors should feel ashamed. And people who continue to benefit from systematic oppression should be ashamed. And that built up a strong coalition of opposition of people who said, well, I don't personally want to embrace feeling shame. That doesn't seem like a fun way to live my life. I don't want to wear a hair shirt or a sackcloth and feel bad about my white skin for the rest of my life. And activists on the left would say, well, we don't want you to beat yourself with a stick or wear a sackcloth. We just want there to be a broader acknowledgement and understanding of the ongoing victimization of Black people as a result of these historical patterns and tendencies, which still persist to a degree to this day. Somebody from California criticizing me for blocking trolls and disreputable people who do belong in the bucket with the rest of the deplorables. Look, I acknowledge your humanity and that many of you have been conned. I'm not going to say through no fault of your own, because it is kind of your fault. If you've bought into the Trump rhetoric, if you've bought into MAGA restorative greatness, if you've convinced yourself that the election was stolen because you heard it from a few different sources, Trump and Trump's affiliates on Fox News, then that's on you. That's on you. You bought a whole pottage of lies. Is pottage an American word? I think it's pretty Scottish. I'm just trying to think if I read it in Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. Actually, do you know what? I haven't read Huckleberry Finn. I better read that. I definitely read Tom Sawyer's Adventures. but it wasn't, Huckleberry Finn wasn't a requisite text for Australian students. So I've got to fix that hole in my education. Maybe I'll read it out loud to my children. Is it a suitable story to read out loud to children? Maybe what I should be saying to trolls when they turn up is, hello, do you have children? Do I need to humanize myself in the same way that policeman, Michael Fantone, who was at risk of being beaten to death by Trump supporters armed with flagpoles and batons that they'd stolen off other police officers who were trying to beat him to death with his own equipment, and he called out to them that he had children, which helped humanize him to some of them, enough Trump supporters so that some of them then formed a protective circle around him and stopped him from being beaten to death by other irrationally enraged Trump supporters. Are you one of those people? Are you one of those 21% of Americans who reportedly tell pollsters that they actually support the Capitol Hill insurrection? I'm sure it will be a priority for Joe Biden to work on bringing down medical costs in some way for Americans. Whilst Medicare for all might not have sufficient public support at this moment in time, there are ways to work towards a type of universal healthcare or single payer or whatever, not just incrementally in terms of being indefinitely delayed, but ways to work around it so that people who are attached to their private health care insurance can still maintain it, and that you don't eliminate a big bloated industry that does still manage to employ a whole bunch of people. No, Trump rescinding his no lobbying executive order won't shake Trumpers, because they don't work with evidence, they work with feelings. And their feeling is that they identified personally with Trump and that they took any criticism of him as if they were being criticized personally. And they celebrated and rejoiced in his transgressions as if they were personal victories. So anything that Trump does is irrelevant to them. Trump can lie and say he's built a wall. He can say that those $1,400 or was it $1,200 checks were from him personally and put his signature on them, even though the president doesn't have the power of the purse, and Congress passed the legislation that made those $1,200 checks possible, because Trump knows that Trumpists are detached from facts. They are firmly anchored in their feelings. That's what cults do. They manipulate people to circumvent their entire logical thought processes and to subsume their own powers of thought into the cult thinking, the group hive mind. I would agree with you that there's a strong probability that Trump is finished in politics, that he's become, because of his unsuccessful coup, an increasingly disgraced figure in American politics, that it's harder to build a viable political majority in any, even in an electoral college sense, if you are affiliated with insurrection, that corporate donors will find you distasteful, that the number of Republicans that have been peeled off their loyalty to the Republican Party for two reasons. Some Republicans are ditching the Republican Party now for being insufficiently loyal to Trump, and other Republicans are ditching the Republican Party now for being inadequately supportive of democracy. So when you say they're going to finish him off after the 6 he's done, the 6 of what? What do you mean Trump's done? Do you mean, you mean the Republican Party will vote him? Oh, you're going back in time to the 6th of January and saying after what he did to the Senate races in Georgia, he's not viable as a Republican anymore. He might start his own political party to splinter the Republican Party, which is the Patriot Party, but it's not likely to be able to replace the Republican Party. It might even take 80% of former Republican voters, but it can't take 100%. And that means that they can't hope to compete with the Democratic Party if they've eroded 20% of their support. Oh, an itemized hospital bill shows that the cost of attaching a chemo bag is $1,000 just to attach it. Yes, and I'm so sorry, Bob, because of course you're dealing with all of those incredible costs right now, and it's just not fair, and it doesn't happen in other highly industrialized nations, America has been too conditioned, and not everybody, lots of people understand that medical costs are too high, but many of them were too conditioned by the pervasiveness of libertarian ideas to think that if you that medical costs just were a function of American exceptionalism. So if you had high costs, that's because the medical care available to Americans is better than anyone else in the world, which is not true. You can get just as adequate or even better medical care in other countries. I mean, high-end medical care, yes, rivals the best medical care elsewhere in the world, but the truth is no Americans are getting value for money with what they pay for through America's healthcare system. Oh, I'm so relieved that Holly's got a good job so that you have top insurance. But yes, most people don't. Yes, a third party is unlikely to be competitive with the two long-term established parties, although people did say that about Hitler as well. He was jailed in 1923 and came back in 1924. Hang on, I think I can share that with you. First, I'll just find it on Twitter. I think Bill Kristol was talking about it. I'll share two things with you. This is two Christians debating whether Christians should vote for Trump, a debate from September the 8th. So one is David French, who's not entirely a never Trumper, but was critical of Trump for a long time, and Eric Metaxas.
There is something dark festering on the right side of the American political aisle. Very, very dark. I have seen it with my own eyes. It has to be sent packing. It cannot be a part of this movement.
Where the heck is this fictional alt-right? Have they been looting? Have they been burning things? They are such a tiny minority.
There is something.
So that's why I shared it with you, because someone was pointing out how stupid Eric Metaxas looks now after the riot on the Capitol, saying, where are these alt-right, this fictitious alt-right? Are they looting? Are they rioting? Yes, they tried to overthrow democracy. They killed a police officer. They injured scores. They injured 50 police officers, and yes, tried to overthrow democracy. Tried to violently overthrow democracy in the United States. There's Steve Bannon, who lost his lawyer after Steve Bannon suggested beheading Dr. Anthony Fauci, which I'd forgotten about. That's part of the fire hose of fascism. You get overwhelmed with news and stories, and your brain doesn't retain all of them to protect you from getting depressed or overwhelmed, I guess. But yes, so hopefully that means, regardless of Donald Trump's pardon of Steve Bannon, that there'll still be some enterprising state attorney general who can be sent files and produce charges at a state level that will circumvent the Trump pardon, which covers federal crimes only. Someone points out that QAnon conspiracy theories tear families apart, and that it may be possible to redeem some people by taking advantage of this current moment, i.e. that Joe Biden's inauguration is a potential tipping point to bring them back into sanity and to make them question themselves before more QAnon people can get to them with some kind of dopey explanation of why none of the Q predictions ever come true. This is a moment where you can maybe hold out a hand to Q people and say, look, if you feel like you're losing your dang mind, welcome back to sanity. Like, just choose a better path for yourself now. Some people think that Trump will be more likely to be convicted in the Senate because of the pardons. maybe that was the cause of his ambivalence. There was a reported reluctance to give Steve Bannon a pardon, and Trump was debating it for a while, potentially because of the impact that might have on the likelihood that he will be convicted in the Senate, and therefore become the only American president ever to be impeached in the House and then subsequently convicted in the Senate, and to then potentially also lose the vote, which is very easy to lose because you only require a simple majority of votes in the Senate to then disqualify Trump from ever holding office in the future in the United States. Yes, Trumpism was a product of a special confluence of circumstances: American apathy and indifference, sexism because of a female candidate, coasting on the laurels of having a black president in the United States, leaving people to think that America had moved past racism. And people won't underestimate the animating power of racism in the United States anymore, or people are at least less likely to underestimate the animating power of white dominionist Christianity that seeks to rule over the rest of Americans, regardless of whether or not they share their religiosity and white nationalist convictions. I guess that's true as well. Fascism is not an anomaly, it's an ever-present possibility in democratic societies, because the duty of citizens is to educate themselves and to make informed voting decisions. But humans are still animal creatures who have an emotional system that exists to motivate us to act decisively in regards to threats, decisively rather than long form analytically. So that ability of human beings to be emotional and react strongly rather than with careful, considered thinking, that system of motivation can be harnessed and abused and exploited by an unprincipled fascist demagogue. And that happens over and over again across history, which is why you have to watch out for people, particularly people that you attempted to underestimate, people who look like idiots but have resonance in the hearts and minds of those who have constantly been called idiots across their lives, or people who have a chip on their shoulder for never being celebrated for being intellectual giants. They don't even ever have to have been called idiots, just if they feel in any way, shape, or form resentful of others. And resentment and grievance is a powerful human emotion that can be marshaled and weaponized and then exaggerated to muster together a potent political army that can either then vote a fascist into office, whereupon they will try and burn the bridges behind them to democracy as fast as they can. And I believe all the criticisms of Trump as a fascist potentially helped keep the guardrails up a little bit for as long as they did, although I don't have any evidence to suggest that is the case. Maybe not. Maybe people were just always going to mock those of us who describe Donald Trump as an incipient fascist. Hitler was a minority, but I learnt more details about his rise to power today, that he got 36% of the vote in one German election. And then his followers were very triumphant. But then he got slightly less, 32% of the vote in the next election. And at that point, the Chancellor of Germany offered Hitler the position of Chancellor, thinking, well, he's a fading force now. His share of the vote is going down, so I can let him be Chancellor, and that will further diminish him because he won't be demanding things anymore. He will have got something. And turns out when you give fascists something, they use what you've given them to make a foothold to get more and more and more, that the voraciousness of fascists is pretty insatiable, that they are on a drive to rule the world and destroy the world. Cool photo, lived in the UK for 14 years was good. The public health care was good, and you had private health care. Nice. Oh, radical right. When do I think the Democrats will openly embrace national health care? Well, I think there's just different ways to conceptualize national health care. So it might be the case that every American gets to have access to a version of healthcare, that Medicare might be expanded until everyone on the lower end of the economic continuum is able to access that, and not just have to rely on emergency room treatment for healthcare, but everybody gets access to preventative medicine rather than healthcare, emergency room healthcare. And when everybody has some degree of coverage, that could be considered national healthcare. But it might be a while before people with private healthcare insurance feel comfortable with dropping the whole system of private healthcare insurance. But I don't think that's the most pressing question. I think how to bring everybody on board with some form of access to healthcare is key. So expanding the public option until everybody has coverage. Oh, thank goodness. Your super Trumper neighbor finally took down his Trump and stopped the steal signs. Look at that. There's evidence of some people finally sobering up from the intoxicating madness of Trump delusions. Trump not being president does diminish him. There is some kind of very potent psychic hold that anybody occupying the position of president has on the minds of many Americans. Not everyone. And I'm perfectly okay with Republicans using the hashtag of not my president. I don't care. We did that for Trump. Well, not me personally. I didn't think it was worthwhile, but lots of people had the hashtag not my president. They didn't want to acknowledge Trump as president. He was the president, but there was a cloud of illegitimacy hanging over him because he did cooperate with Russia. His campaign manager, Paul Manafort, had met prior to the election with a Russian agent, Konstantin Kilimnik, in the Havana bar in Trump Tower and handed over internal GOP polling data to give the Russians a better idea of where they needed to pick up enough votes to win, to eke out an electoral college victory. So there was collaboration, there was intent, there was execution. And Trump wasn't really a legitimate president of the United States, but he was the president. And it didn't make a lick of difference that many, many millions of Americans viewed Trump as the illegitimate president. So I'm not that worried about Republicans viewing Biden as illegitimate, provided they're not violent insurrectionists. So there's more of a risk of that with Trump loyalists than there was with people who were disappointed that Hillary Clinton was cheated out of her likely victory as president in 2016. Oh, Bob says Massachusetts has top state health care, and so does New Jersey. And I'm moving to Massachusetts, so that's nice. Is it too early for hot cocoa? You need some. Who do you think is a troll? No, somebody's just happy. This is not a troll, Alan. This is just a happy friend. Oh, you're not worried about him. Locked and loaded. Stupid puppets have strings that lead to those who control them. That's a great point, Molly, because Hillary and Nancy Pelosi have both been raising that now Trump's out of office, there need to be investigations as to Trump's calls with Putin and those exchanges, and to investigate the influence that Putin had over Trump. That's good. We're not letting go of that. Oh, Ninja. Yeah, Ninja is a troll. I'm not seeing any Ninja. Where's Ninja? I don't see them. Oh, Ninja Buddha. I remember. So you just saw them here. Well, I hope you muted them. We don't need Ninja today, do we? We're having a good day. Happy Biden-Harris Inauguration Day. Maybe we can check out some Biden-Harris celebrations. Periscope. All right, so there's a few international websites that are broadcasting in different languages. Oh, NBC's doing it. Okay, so we can take a moment to look at NBC's broadcasting of the Biden-Harris inauguration. Joe has arrived. Very exciting. Let's have a look.
And they are being flanked by members of the JCCIC, the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies. We saw Senator Klobuchar as well, who's one of the members of that committee a few minutes ago, sort of inspecting the troops, if you will. But they'll go in. They'll be greeted by members of the leadership as we listen in for just a moment.
It's really stunning to watch. The president-elect standing at the foot of those very stairs that 2 weeks ago we saw the desecration of our U.S. Capitol.
Yes, oh my God.
Perhaps he's pausing there and has that very thing in his mind, or perhaps he's thinking of the day, oh gosh, decades ago when he first came to Congress as.
Uh-oh. Sorry about that. Biden, Harris. I was trying to make the screen bigger and it all went black. Russia Times is broadcasting it as well. Historic. You believe there will be over 2 billion viewers. The world has waited for this historic day. It is historic. Thank you, Alan and Holly and Jeff. It's beautiful to share this moment with you. I am scared still. I have some fear but I hope that everybody's been really, really very thoroughly vetted, and that there's no sleeper agents of quietly queuing on people who want to achieve their 2 minutes of fame. Yes, let us take a moment to give thanks to Stacey Abrams. Someone made the point, a professor from New York University that I was listening to on a Daily Beast podcast called The New Abnormal, which is quite humorous and full of swears. If you like that, I recommend you give it a try. It's got Rick Wilson and Molly Jong-Fast in it. But they interviewed a professor from New York University who said, Twitter, Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg don't get the credit for taking Trump off the platform. The person who gets credit for Trump being removed from Twitter is Stacey Abrams, because of Stacey Abrams' work organizing in Georgia gave the Democrats the Senate majority, meaning that Democrats will be chairing the committees into big tech and what regulations need to be imposed and whether big tech needs to be broken up by federal government legislation for being more powerful than the governments of smaller countries. That's a good point. Go buy a paper. I will tomorrow when I wake up. Why isn't Periscope loading? I hope they're doing some good fumigation of the White House. And the news story I'm seeing on Twitter, when I scroll on Twitter to see what's happening, is that Joe Biden has a Peloton and some security experts are concerned. That's the level of non-scary news stories that we can expect now, hopefully, that American political life will be a lot less frightening. Yes, happy Inauguration Day, Molly. Sorry I missed you. Miss saying goodbye to you. Au revoir. Let's all cherish this day. Yes. I wanted to watch a bit more of the inauguration, but it's not working. Congratulations and happy inaugural day to all your American friends. Very nice. Oh no, that's China Daily. I don't want China Daily. Oh, here we go. Long distance high five. I saw someone on Twitter say, oh, that was Mitt Romney. I saw someone on Twitter say, as an emotional support Canadian, what do I do now? So that's sweet that Canadians have been providing emotional support to Americans, so much so that they've adopted.
Please direct your attention toward the inaugural platform. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A.
I will say hello to Mr. Dav, and he'll appreciate that. Oof. I guess you don't really need me to watch this. You'll be able to better watch it on your televisions. There's Lindsey Graham wearing a mask. Good that the Republicans are wearing their masks. Surgical masks being non-woven fibers are typically better quality in relation to catching viral particles than purely cloth masks. But that's all I'm going to say for tonight. Enjoy the send-off from me. Enjoy your happy Inauguration Day. Why is somebody wearing a red hat? That's scary. Oh, I guess I've just learnt to associate fear with red hats now. Oh, is that a Republican? Because the person on the left is that Republican Stephen Solis, the one who was shot at a baseball game by a fanatical Bernie Sanders fan. Oh, well. I'm sad that they wore a red hat. That made me afraid, but... Oh, Bobby's saying, may I say an early welcome to the United States of America? Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, cool photo. Take care, everybody, and see you all soon. And please report the bad troll person. Please report them. Hopefully they get kicked off the platform. The market is up. Yay. That's awesome that the market appreciates having a sane and stable pair of leaders in form of the person of the Vice President and the President of the United States. Well, he's going to be sworn in a minute. How many minutes is the inauguration? I'm glad to know the market's up, though. Good to see the market appreciates leadership.
Ladies and gentlemen, leadership of the United States House of Representatives, Republican Whip the Honorable Stephen Scalise, and Majority Whip the Honorable James E. Clyburn.
Bob is imagining future generations finding Grandpa's Trump stuff and saying, Grandpa was a Nazi? Grandpapa was a Nazi? Yeah. Sleep well, finally. Yes, thank you, Alan. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Stay safe. Stay safe, Joe Biden. Stay safe, Kamala Harris. Stay safe, everybody, and enjoy the fruits of your pro-democracy labor.